Now, this is a cold, misty, windswept beach with chocolate-coloured waves lapping on the shore. It's like this for 6 months of the year here, and every morning a blanket of dense fog traps everything beneath it and casts the coast in an endless, miserable grey. It's a far cry from the surfing ideal in our heads, that picture-perfect image of crystal clear blue waters with perfect A-frame peaks unloading onto palm-fringed golden sands. But this, right here, on a cold, misty South American beach, is where surfing all began. But hold on a second, didn't surfing start in Hawaii? Well, yes, sort of. We'll get to that part. But wave riding, as we know it today, has origins dating back hundreds, if not thousands of years, long before it ever reached the Hawaiian Islands. Most people just don't know this, and surfing's true origins are just less sexy than Hawaii. Along the Pacific coast of South America, the ancient Moche and Chimu civilizations of Peru were riding waves between 2,000 and 3,500 years ago. Not on the sort of boards we know today, but these Peruvian fishermen crafted lightweight, reed-based watercraft known as Caballito de Totora, which translates into little reed horses. So after a long day fishing, fishermen would return to the shore with their catch and would actually stand and kneel on the caballitos as they glided along. They did this not only to return to shore, but for enjoyment. Some researchers also believe that these early Peruvian wave riders may have engaged in ritualized contests where young fishermen would race each other back to the beach. The tradition of the Caballitos de Totora remains alive even today, and in the surf town of Huanchaco, you can still see them being ridden. Now, there are multiple theories as to how surfing came to Polynesia. Some historians believe that early Peruvians could have sailed to Polynesia from South America and brought surfing with them. However, there is limited evidence to support this, and modern genetic and linguistic studies show that Polynesians originated from Southeast Asia and not South America. So while it is theoretically possible that surfing could have come to Polynesia via Peru, many historians and archaeologists believe that surfing in Polynesia developed independently in the islands. Surfing or wave riding in Polynesia began as a form of travel and recreation, where people used wooden boards to ride waves while fishing or moving between boats and the shore. It was also closely tied to their spiritual beliefs, often seen as a way to connect with nature and the gods. Now, the Polynesians were among the greatest seafarers the world has ever known, navigating vast stretches of ocean using advanced open ocean navigation skills and large double-hulled canoes, likely around 1,500 years ago. They travelled thousands of miles across the Pacific, and most remarkably, they were guided only by the stars, the ocean currents, behaviours of the local sea life. And if you want to find out more about how they did this, there's a wicked video that I'll leave up there. Now, the ancient Polynesians didn't just sail around the Pacific on a whim just for the sake of it. Their ocean crossings were deliberate, not accidental, and they carried essential supplies like plants, livestock, breedable women, and tools to establish new settlements. So as they ventured across the Pacific, they carried with them their extensive ocean knowledge, their stories and traditions, which included surfing. Polynesians, especially those from modern-day Tahiti and the Marquesas Islands, already had a deep connection to the ocean and had developed wave riding practices before arriving in Hawaii. They brought these traditions with them, and once surfing reached Hawaii, it evolved into an integral part of their culture. Over time, Hawaiians refined the art of riding waves, turning it into a sacred tradition that intertwined with their way of life. In early Hawaiian society, surfing was not only for recreation, but it was also a display of skill and strength and social standing. Chiefs and royalty, known as alihi, sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, as per usual, rode massive boards, sometimes up to 15 foot long, and these boards were known as olos. Now, these huge olo boards were made from the wood of the willy willy tree, and commoners, whilst using wood from the same tree, used smaller boards known as alaya. Surfing was also part of religious rituals, with surfers often praying to Kanaloa, the ocean god, for good waves and successful rides. Kahunas conducted ceremonies to bless new surfboards, and competitions determined social status, while chiefs used surf competitions to settle disputes, and warriors trained in the ocean to build strength and resilience. And entire communities would gather to watch these ceremonies and contests and watch people ride waves. And Hawaiians didn't just simply surf for fun, it was embedded into their culture. But like in many cases around the world, when Western explorers arrived in the Hawaiian Islands, surfing as a sport and as a culture would suffer a devastating decline. In 1778, Captain James Cook and his crew became the first Europeans to visit the Hawaiian Islands. Cook's voyage took him from England around the Cape of Good Hope, New Zealand, Tonga, Tahiti, the Cook Islands, Christmas Island, and eventually Hawaii. Now, the arrival of foreign ships would forever change Hawaii, and not for the better. Missionaries and settlers brought with them new religious beliefs and social structures that discouraged traditional Hawaiian practices, including surfing. In those days, most of the Western world believed the ocean was something to be feared, not a place where pastimes were carried out. Westerners also brought disease to Hawaii. The native Hawaiian population, with no immunity to foreign illnesses, suffered devastating outbreaks over the following century, and the population of the Hawaiian Islands dropped from around 300,000 to 70,000. And with this decline in population, by the end of the 19th century, surfing had almost entirely disappeared too. But when surfing was all but lost as a sport and as a culture, it didn't totally disappear. A new wave of Hawaiian pride and cultural resurgence brought surfing back from the dead. One man, more than anyone else, would take surfing beyond the shores of Hawaii and introduce it to the world, becoming the global ambassador of the sport. His name? Duke Kahanamoku. The Duke was not just a surfer. He was a Hawaiian legend, an Olympic gold medal winning swimmer with the charisma and athleticism that turned him into a global icon. As he traveled the world, he introduced more and more people to the art of wave riding through impressive demonstrations all over the globe, both in California and the east coast of America, and perhaps most notably at Freshwater Beach in Sydney in Australia. Duke's influence was profound, and thanks to him, surfing spread to beaches all over the globe. But it was in Southern California where surfing boomed. Here, surfing fused with the burgeoning beach culture of the 1920s, and from there, surfing exploded. In the 1930s, technological advancements helped revolutionize surfing by developing the hollow surfboard, making surfboards lighter to carry and much easier to surf. Then, with fiberglass and foam surfboards making the sport more accessible to more people, the 1970s and 1980s saw the rise of shortboards, professional surf competitions, and the birth of major surf brands such as Quicksilver and Billabong. In the 1970s, California's surf culture merged with the broader counterculture movement. This was a time where people embraced anti-establishment ideals, environmentalism, and generally a free-spirited lifestyle. Many surfers rejected mainstream society, choosing a more nomadic existence, chasing waves, living out of vans, and doing anything they could to avoid corporate jobs. This actually sounds pretty familiar for me today. Surfing also blended with the emerging skateboarding scene, and psychedelic rock and reggae music became anthems for surfers who identified with the era's rebellious ethos. So by the late 70s, California had become the epicenter of modern surf culture, and to this day it's still a global surfing hub and is home to most of the major surf brands and iconic spots like Malibu, Trestles and Huntington Beach. In terms of surf-obsessed nations, Australia quickly followed, becoming a surfing powerhouse with a fully fledged domestic tour, world-class waves and the talent to match. Eventually, like ink dropped into water, surfing expanded to every shore around the world, colouring nations from South Africa to Brazil, Europe and beyond. By the late 90s, surfing had become a legitimate sport, And what was once a professional tour made up of largely dribbly 2-foot mushy beach breaks with little to no sponsorship or prize money had transformed into the Dream Tour, where the best surfers in the world would now get to compete in the best waves in the world for real 5 to 6 figure prize money. Simultaneously, the surf industry boomed with brands like Quicksilver, Billabong and Rip Curl turning surfing into a billion-dollar industry through apparel, accessories and further board innovations. The 1990s and 2000s also saw increased media coverage and the rise of global surf icons like Kelly Slater and Lisa Anderson. In many ways, this was surfing's heyday. And in 2015, the World Surf League, or better known as the WSL, was born from the previous ASP, further elevating the sport with professional live-streamed events and huge sponsorship deals. Then, in Tokyo 2020, surfing made its inaugural appearance in the Olympic Games, and the event was won by Brazilian Italo Ferreira. So from the early fishermen of West Africa and Peru who first rode waves, to its spiritual and cultural growth through Polynesia and its popularization in Hawaii and California. Today, surfing is huge. And while the industry did suffer a pretty big decline throughout the 2010s, it's making a comeback, and surfing is now more popular than it ever has been in history, and a way of life that continues to inspire freedom and creativity all over the globe. Hope you've enjoyed this story, guys. I hope it gives you a bit of an insight into how surfing was born and how it spread around the globe. If you want to go really deep on the history of surfing, I definitely recommend this book, which is aptly named The History of Surfing. It's a big one, but it's a beautiful book, really incredibly well researched, beautiful photos, really well written. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next episode.